that just leaves me to welcome everyone to this webinar series, the first one from Ethimex. So this is volume 1, Is Grain Neutral Spirit All the Same? And today we're delighted to be joined by my colleague Bert Albrecht from Ethimex. I just wanted to take a moment to say thank you for everyone for joining. We hope it will be an informative discussion. My name is Charlie Pountney. I am head of marketing for Ethimex and our subsidiary Charles Edge London, and I'll be hosting / moderating this event. We are currently live using StreamYard, streaming onto YouTube and LinkedIn. So if you're joining, thank you very much. Good to see you. If you have any questions, please do pop these in the messages and we will try to answer those as we go. But we'll also be doing a Q&A at the end. So if you wanted to save your questions, then pop them in the chat and we will try to cover those. We'll try and wrap this up in about half an hour, 45 minutes, leaving some time for the Q&A, as I mentioned. And then following the conclusion of this webinar, we'll be making sure that we send out the video recording via our mailing list, and also putting it on LinkedIn so you can view it later. So if you're not subscribed to our mailing list, please do so via our website or just follow us on LinkedIn and you'll get notified when that recording is available to rewatch. So without further ado, I'll just introduce us from Ethimex. We are an internationally recognized leading global company sourcing premium ethanol and spirits, including whiskey, new and used casks and botanicals, having been founded by Charles Edge in 1909. And our topic expert today is Bert Albrecht. Bert is our UK manager here at Ethimex. And as a background in engineering, Bert has spent a lot of his career in sales and distribution of specialized chemicals before joining Ethimex to grow our UK spirits and ethanol distribution business. With this engineering and chemical background, Bert's become somewhat of a go-to expert on GNS in the UK distilling scene. So we are really pleased to have Bert as our expert today. So I'm seeing a lot of people saying you're here, so it's great, and thank you for letting us know that you're on. So let's kick off with a question for you, Bert. So question, which is there really a difference between neutral spirits, and if so, how much is this difference, and is it worth considering?
Yes, it's a fair question actually, because you would think ethanol is ethanol, right? So it's just a chemical. Now the reality is that ethanol, as you might imagine, only exists on paper. What we work with day to day is quite different. Is quite a different animal. So if you look at the day to day ethanol, what do we have? We've got about 96% of pure ethanol. Now this is in the UK and Europe. This is a legal requirement to be able to call it neutral spirit. So we need 96% of alcohol or ethanol. Then we've got about 4% of water, and then we've got a tiny little bit of something else. Let's call it impurities. But I can tell you already that these impurities, that's what makes a difference, and that's what offers us a whole array of ethanols. And these are directly linked to the feedstock. Now, for the safety of the ethanol, these impurities are limited. So we got a legal limit on 8 of these in the UK, and the most dangerous, I would say, is methanol. So the methanol level in the GNS or the neutral spirit is quite important. For agricultural ethanol, this is limited to 30 grams per hectoliter pure alcohol. If you look then for vodka in particular, this goes down to 10 grams. And then for London dry gin, not distilled gin, but London dry gin specifically, the limit is lower again. and we're talking about 5 grams per hectoliter of pure alcohol. Now, to put this in perspective, it shouldn't scare you if you're on the upper limit, if you're near the 30 grams per hectoliter, because in the end, if you look at tequila, for example, tequila has to have methanol in it by law, and the maximum or the upper level is 300 grams per hectoliter. So we talk about 10 times more. So for ethanol, we're definitely on the safe side. What else can I say about these impurities? They offer us the variety. We're going to focus a little bit more on the esters and the aldehydes and the high alcohols, because these are the ones that actually bring the variety and the difference to the table. So that's a little bit more.
There's one slide, isn't there, Bert? This is just an introductory slide, so we know, ethanol, the chemical compound for that.
And I think if you're looking at the different styles of ethanol, at first it might be looking at different samples of white paint and what's the difference. But in the end, I think the most prevalent example of these differences is reflected in the vodka. I think vodka is the closest spirit that we have that is as close as possible to ethanol as it can be. Charlie, do you have a slide there with the different styles of the vodkas?
Indeed, yes. Oh, well, then onto the vodkas?
Yeah, next one, yeah, there we go. So here we go, a nice range of different brands, different vodkas, but they're all based on a different feedstock. So if you go to a bar, especially to a cocktail bar, let's say, or a quite refined bar, you will find quite a range of just in the vodka, and the main difference for me at least will be the feedstock, will be the base. If you then talk to the bartenders or you see how they go at work, you will notice that they use different vodkas for different cocktails, and that there's a good reason for this. You may also notice that in some, especially the alcohol-heavy cocktails, that they're using 2 vodkas within the same cocktail. You might think, well, what's the point of this? I mean, it's vodka is vodka is vodka, but actually the different feedstock will bring different aspects to the cocktail. I'm talking here about integration, and not so much about flavor, but also about texture and mouthfeel. And if you have a vodka that has a longer aftertaste and you bring it into the cocktail, you're going to have a different experience than when you have, let's say, for example, a wheat vodka is quite snappy and quite short. It's going to be a different experience. And I think the vodka in this case reflects these differences in the ethanol quite clearly. Yeah.
Thank you. So on the raw spirit, so in the UK and Europe, ethyl alcohol typically is distilled to at least 96%, and that's considered organoleptically neutral. Sorry. But why is it 96% and not 97, 99, or even above that?
Yeah, that's a good question, because in the end, you will find ethanol available on the market at 99%, even 99.9%. So why not make the spirit more pure by distilling it further? Now, in reality, you will find, even though there's a legal limit, the legal minimum is 96%. In the market, you will find ethanols at typically 96.2, 96.5%. But of course, if the minimum is 96, there will be a cost aspect involved. Why distilling any further than you have to, right? At the same time, it becomes quite hard to distill any further, because as you approach the 96%, you're also approaching the azeotrope between water and ethanol. So the azeotrope means that you have a constant boiling point, and as a result, you can't separate the alcohol from the water any longer by simple distillation. Now, because of this, historically, it makes sense. The number 96 makes sense, because it would be quite hard, especially a few decades back, to go beyond that number. Nowadays, we have technology that allows us to go up to 99 0.9%. Some of these are not suitable for the beverage, so you can't just add benzene or sulfuric acid to the mix, because that would render it non-potable. But at the same time, we still have the molecular sieves that can do the job, and we can indeed produce a nice, fine, pure spirit. But of course, there's a cost implication there. So yeah, that's what I would say to that. Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about the feedstock. That's one of the key considerations, isn't it? So why is it that wheat is so popular, and out of that, why winter wheat?
Yes, it's a question that comes up, and people wonder why the wheat and why the winter wheat. Now, the fact that wheat is popular is, first of all, we have to say that wheat is popular here, and here meaning in the UK and in Europe. And the reason is because it's widely available. The climate allows for it. It's perfect conditions for wheat. Now, if you go to the States, for example, you will find that corn is the more popular one. And we know from experience that if wheat is required in the States, often it will be imported from Europe. Then, if you look at the globe and you look at the line, the Tropic of Cancer, anything below it, you will find that in these places, sugarcane is the more popular one. So it's really the reason why wheat is so popular here is geographical, and it's really to do with the climate. And then the question about your question about winter wheat, Charlie. That's first of all, winter wheat is a variety of the wheat that is planted or sown in autumn. Then the seeds start germinating and the plant starts to grow. But then as soon as the winter hits, as the cold hits, the plant goes dormant. Now, in this dormant period, we have a vernalization, and this results in a higher content of fermentable sugars. So basically, it's higher yield, and basically the reason for winter wheat is the yield or the return on your investment, really. Spring wheat is used, but very rarely, not so much in beverage. It's used for some tender cakes and pastries where protein is less important, because there's also less protein in the spring wheat.
So is it more the choice of feedstock as a winter wheat? Is it more a cultural thing that just everyone else does it, so therefore I'll do it as well, and the commercial decision? Is that what?
It's pure economical. It's pure economical. If you look at the land, the availability of the land, you got more return of your winter wheat than of your spring wheat. But it doesn't do anything to the flavor, though. There's no benefit there. It's not a different profile. I would be surprised that anyone could distinguish the two styles from each other.
And in terms of, let's say, in the UK, choosing wheat over grape spirit, is that just a cultural availability thing in the UK?
Yes, because wheat is so widely available. First of all, it's non-seasonal. It's very easy to store wheat. If you compare to grapes, it's more difficult. And also grape, as an example you cited, is seasonal. So you will find at the end of the season there might be a shortage or a surplus. We don't know in advance. You're also much more weather dependent because the harvest is smaller. And then within the grapes, you are competing with different industries. Mainly the wine industry, but also the brandies and the grape-based liqueurs.
So it's a question of availability as well.
Yes. Yes, indeed. Yeah.
And on a similar, point, wheat alcohol, is that suitable for gluten intolerance? We get that question a lot.
Yes, indeed, and that's a very good question to ask, and it makes sense as well. Now, in terms of alcohol, it is accepted that spirits distilled to the level of neutral spirit, definitely they are safe for people on a gluten-free diet. The acceptable level that goes around in the industry is 20 ppm, so 20 parts per million of gluten. And that should be safe for people on a gluten-free diet. We checked this with the celiac awareness. They have confirmed that this is actually the case. And based on this, actually we had a meeting with them, and then we asked, okay, so it's if our ethanol is gluten-free, can we have your logo? Can we have a stamp on it that says, well, this is a gluten-free product? And they said no, because the only products that can have this label are products that normally have gluten in them. Say, for example, bread or cookies or pastries that you would expect them to have gluten in. They might also have a gluten-free version, and that's where the certification or the qualification comes in. Now, another thing, of course, is how does this translate to the wider audience? If people say, oh, it's a wheat vodka and I'm gluten intolerant, maybe I won't have this then. They might not be aware of the distillation process where everything is extracted. So some producers definitely use this information in their marketing to say, okay, we offer spirits based on grape, potato, apples, clearly products that don't have gluten in them. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's good to know. Interesting to know that you have to actually have a gluten product before, and then take the gluten out before you can call it gluten free.
Yes.
So another type of spirit category is the organic. Does organic spirit affect the flavor profile in any way?
No, it doesn't. It doesn't actually. Organic is more to do with the production methods. One of the things is the production. So during the cultivation of the ingredients, you can't use synthetic chemicals or pesticides or GMO, genetically modified organisms. They can't be used. And secondly, there has to be a clear segregation in a production. If there is organic and non-organic, it has to be clearly separated. And then thirdly, you have to provide traceability of all the ingredients that you're using in your product. So bringing this a bit wider, not just ethanol, but say, for example, gin. It's not just the neutral spirit that needs to be organic, but also your botanical. So it's the whole lot. But no, it won't affect the flavor or the profile at all. And this is the same for other certifications, like say kosher or sustainability or fair trade. These are separate from the actual product or the feedstock that you're looking at. Yeah.
But we've had a question in about impurities in vodka. Is that? Do you want to take that question now?
Yeah. Go ahead. Yeah.
So it's what from Amal. Thank you for your question. He says, what is this specification of total impurities for the highest quality vodka grade GNS?
The highest quality. Actually, there's only a limit for the minimum limitation, or say the maximum limitation of the impurities. So in the EU and the UK, we have 8 categories of impurities that will be controlled. So methanol is the most important one, and this is true across the whole range of feedstock. So it doesn't specify whether it's grape or it's potato. It applies to ethanol of agricultural origin. So anything that is made from plants has to abide by these rules. I've got a list of 8 here. There's a control on acidity. You got the esters, then you got the aldehydes, and the alcohols. The methanol is controlled. Also the solids. Let's see what else. Yeah, you've got the dry extract, which is solids, and then nitrogen as well, and furfural also. I think if you want, I can send you the list over email later on, if that's okay.
Yeah, I'm sure that would be appreciated. Thank you. And on a similar question about impurities affecting quality, I think that's maybe what you've just said. There's a question on what are the main impurities that can affect the quality in grain and molasses. Are they all the same? There's that list that you said. Does it affect all
Yes, the limitations are set for ethanol across the board. So disregarding the feedstock, really. It's true that some feedstock will bring will bring different challenges. For example, if you look at potato is quite heavy on methanol because of the feedstock. They have a lot of methanol in them. So during distillation, often potato distillers will use a demet column, a separate column, just specifically to take out the methanol, because they also have to be within that range. And then, as I mentioned previously, depending on how you want to use the spirit, you might find that your limit is 30 grams per hectoliter pure alcohol. This is for all the spirits. Now, if you want specifically for vodka in Europe and for gin, a London dry gin, which goes down to 5 milligrams. So the methanol is by far the most important. If I can say something about the three more popular impurities, which are the esters and the aldehydes and the high alcohols, sometimes they are favored because they actually bring more character to the table, and they bring the character or the feel of the feedstock in the spirit. Because in the end, if as you're driving up the ABV, alcohol by volume, when you're distilling, you're stripping the alcohol of all the impurities, but also all the flavor. The color goes, the flavor goes as much as possible. And the higher this ABV goes, the more neutral your spirit will become. If you then consider different spirits like rum or whiskey, they deliberately will not distill to up to 96. And the reason is to keep the character, to maintain the character, and to maintain the input from that feedstock to come through in the final product. I hope this answers your question.
Yeah, I think that was a good answer. Thank you, Bert. So when we come to have our final product, obviously people will be consuming it in bars and things, and I think you were talking before, Bert, and you mentioned that a lot of people ask you how much taste of the actual base spirit is left after diluting with tonic water, for instance. So it's probably a question for that maybe we could cover as well.
Yes, indeed, and that's it's a question that we get a lot, and it's a fair question. At the same time, I would say it's maybe not the right question to ask because we're talking about gin and tonic, I imagine. So it's not so much that the base spirit will be masked or covered by, first of all, the botanicals, and then secondly by the gin or by the tonic that you add to your gin and tonic. It's more about the fact that base spirit is not just about flavor. There's a lot more to flavor. There's a lot more to the base than just the flavor. We also have the aroma, and we have the texture, and then we have the depth of the base. Now, if you look at gin and tonic, let's break it down. First, we have the gin, and then we have the tonic. So, if you look at the gin, for gin, you could use a very neutral base, very clean, very low on impurities, and then you could use it almost as a blank canvas to create or develop your gin and let the botanicals shine. Or you could use a base that has a bit more character. And in that case, the base almost becomes a botanical itself. So it's part of the botanicals in your botanicals bill. Now, regardless of whether you use a very clean GNS, or you use a GNS with a bit of character, you're still going to have to accept that each base will interact differently with each botanical. Sometimes when I talk to distillers, they say, it took me 35 recipes or tries before I got to my final recipe. Now, imagine if I told this distiller, look, that's fine. Now we're going to change your base. I don't think they will be happy because they're going to have to start from scratch. They have to start all the way again because a different base will have a different impact on botanicals. Some bases you will find they will emphasize or they will work with the botanical, a certain botanical, and others they will compete. They will have similar input, and it will really draw back or pull back the effect of the botanical. I think in the UK we have this quite famous story now about Sipsmith, who used to have their base was barley based, and they changed it to wheat. They didn't tell anyone, and probably were quietly hoping that it would pass. But actually, they got a lot of feedback from their customers that didn't notice the difference. So there is a clear difference in the base, even if you go to a gin and a gin and tonic. So that was the gin part. Now, then, if you're going to dilute with tonic, you have to realize that tonic, the base will also interact with the tonic. Tonic is quite bitter. So now, if you make a gin and tonic with a gin which is quite sweet by nature, has a sweet undertone, like for example grape or sugarcane based. If you compare that with a gin and tonic with the same botanicals built made from rye, you're going to have a completely different drink. So that kind of answers that question. And there's a lot of variety in the base. And not saying that you're going to taste the sugarcane in your gin and tonic, but it will have an effect not just on the flavor, but also on the texture, on the depth, and on the integration of the different botanicals, and then the interaction with the tonic as well, obviously.
And will it actually have an effect on the time or the ability of the essential oils or the extraction in the distillation process? Obviously, the flavor will change, but does it have any differences on the actual distillation with the botanicals in a gin, for instance?
The oils, I'm not so sure, because you're still talking about ethanol. It's more the undertone and how it will interact. I think if you're talking about the oils, about the juniper, probably the juniper is quite a strong botanical. I'm more thinking of the lighter botanicals, especially flowers and the fresh green herbs. That's where the base will have is most effect, whether it can emphasize these, or whether it will completely almost annihilate them.
Okay, we've had one question whilst we're talking about feedstock about rice grain. Have you had any experience or come across any challenges of using rice?
No, rice. I mean, to be honest, rice is not very common in England or the UK. We do have rice ethanol. We trade this in mostly that's going to be the Far East. It's quite expensive to bring it over here as well, so that will play as well. So the popularity is not that great. We have not had any issues with it as such, but then we don't have much experience with it either. If you're interested in this for use in the UK or in Europe, one consideration perhaps is the volume. If you want 1,000 liter, it would be very, very hard to source it. If you're looking at larger volumes, that's probably more realistic.
Yeah, this is a question from Najuma on LinkedIn. So I don't know where they're based, but that might be something we could pick up afterwards and see if the wider team has got any more experience. Potentially, our colleague Will, or based in Asia, might. Right. So I think we'll move on to the why the questions around, which is an important question on why would you be choosing a particular type of base. That kind of leads us on quite well there, I think.
Yes, when choosing a base or an ethanol, why use this one, not the other one? There's a few considerations that you have to make. I think first of all, I think it's clear from the presentation, and many people in the industry will agree that not all ethanol is the same, even though the law suggests that it's organoleptically neutral, so you shouldn't taste the difference, but actually you can. And this actually touches on my second point that I want to make, is that the aspects of the ethanol are more than just flavor, because many people focus on flavor and not much else. But actually, you also have to consider aroma, then the texture, and then also the depth of your ethanol. So starting with the aroma, if you consider that the nose and the mouth are connected to each other, you can imagine that a lot of the flavor that we have, or the taste that we perceive, is actually influenced by the smell. You might have the experience where you had a cold and your nose is blocked, and you think, oh my God, the food doesn't taste of anything. But there's nothing wrong with your mouth, and there's nothing wrong with the food. It's just your nose is blocked. You can't smell it, and suddenly you've got a whole different experience of your meal. And the same is true for ethanol. So if you think here, for example, about the grape-based ethanol, it's got a fantastic aroma. It's all about green fruit, flowers. It's a very pleasant aroma that really puts you in the mood for to enjoy your drink. Another aspect is the texture. So by texture, what I mean here is the mouthfeel. Notorious for this is potato vodka. Is nothing like any other vodka. It's got a velvety, smooth feeling, which can also soften the alcohol, the bite of the alcohol that you might have when you have a drink, whether that's neat or in a cocktail. Specifically, think about a cocktail when we've got a lot of alcohol in there, but you don't want to burn in your throat. If you use this type of vodka or ethanol, you're going to have a different experience as compared to wheat, for example. And that also leads us to the next one, which is the depth of the ethanol. And this again is about a taste experience, not just a flavor. You can imagine with the wheat has got quite a sharp entry and exit as well, so it's almost like a bang. While you have potato and also grape to a certain extent, it's more elongated, so you get more of an aftertaste. And again, think about integrating this in a cocktail. That can be quite attractive or quite a nice experience to have that. So yeah, if you think about feedstock, don't just think about flavor. Think about the whole package. It's not just flavor. It's a lot more. And then of course in the end, you're gonna have to decide where you're gonna use your alcohol for, or what you're gonna use it and how you use it. Is it meant to be consumed neat? Are you going to use mixers with loads of liquids and very sweet and aggressive, or quite elaborate flavors? Is it for an RTD? Maybe only at 5%, 4%. Maybe thinking about seltzer where the tastes are all quite subtle. Or maybe it's for cocktails that are quite heavy on the alcohol, so not much water and ice, just a lot of the alcohol is present, so you want to give that a bit more attention as well. There's quite a number of examples here that I could give you. So, for example, the potato vodka is quite bold, stands up really well in an espresso martini, also in cocktails where you use quite a lot of citrus or ginger. Think about the Moscow Mule. That works really well. It doesn't work that well with very sweet cocktails. Say for example, a porn style martini. That's probably much better with the wheat alcohol there. If you have the sweeter bases, like grape or sugarcane, they will work quite nicely with a bitter counterpart. And I'm thinking about gin and tonic, for example. That works really well. If you think about creating a gin and tonic, you looking at what base to use. Then again, you have to have in mind what kind of botanicals do I want to use. Is this going to work together? Are you going to more in a savory direction? Are you going to go citrus forward? You have to make these decisions and maybe try a few different ones. That's always a good idea. And then something else I wanted to share with you. My favorite cocktail is Negroni. And I would say I always think that the gin makes the Negroni, and I challenge you to do this when you have an opportunity. If you make 3 different Negronis with 3 different gins, and I'm talking about gins made from a different base, say with a similar botanical bill, say juniper forward, maybe citrus oriented, and if you make the 3 different Negronis, they will be all completely different. And in the end, the question I think is important. That I think is, when you taste your drink, are you going to taste the components? Are you going to have hints of vermouth or Campari or from the gin? Or are you going to taste Negroni? And that's when you have your perfect integrated cocktail. And I think the base can do a lot to help this integration of the other spirits in your cocktail. So yeah, I think as a conclusion to this chat with Charlie here, I think what we have to recognize first of all is ethanol is not all the same. It's not just a chemical. There is a choice. Then you have to have in mind the application that you want to do, and then of course, as I said many times, it's not just about flavor. There's more to the ethanol than flavor only. There's also the aroma, etc., etc. But in the end, it will be the consumer that decides what he, she, or they like. And that's okay. There's variety, there's difference, and it's nice to explore these things. So yeah, if there are more questions, please go ahead. I think it's a good time.
I've got one for you, Bert. So when you're speaking to distilleries, and I know you're focused in the UK, but how much of the ethanol choice that goes into their decision making when they're deciding to come up with a product?
Yes, it's a tricky one in the end, because often people people talking to us, they will say, okay, Bert, can you send me a sample of the grape and a sample of the potato and a sample of the cane and a sample of the wheat, and then they end up with wheat. There's an understandable reason because while as I mentioned, wheat is popular, available. It's fairly cheap compared to the others. Others can be a bit more expensive, and then also volume. The starting distilleries can't maybe commit to large volumes, so they're almost limited to the available or the popular choices. If you have a larger distillery, or you have guaranteed sales, you can actually venture into quite exotic bases, maybe spelt or quinoa superfoods. But at the same time, we also find that distillers, they're quite creative, and they sometimes mix two different bases together. And the way that it happens sometimes is that they might make a distillation in one form, make a concentrate, and then dilute it with a different style of ethanol to add the different aspects of the ethanol to it. And that's really nice to see this creativity going on. And it's I think it's clever. I think it's really clever, because you make a unique product and you take advantage of all the strong points, or the points that you like of a particular base, without going full out 100% of one base. Yeah.
Great. And we do have one question. Well, we might have a couple actually. So Liam has asked, can you get away without using a demethylizer when producing wheat GNS?
Yes, you can. You don't need the demet column per se. But then at the same time, if you don't use the demet column, it means that your main column is quite robust and quite probably quite tall. I think it depends on how much methanol you find in your GNS after distillation. I know several people who don't use the demethylizer. But then, yeah, depending on the feedstock, I know people, definitely potato is an issue. Some people who use grapes as well, they use a demet column just to make sure they can get everything out. It depends how you set up, really. Yeah.
Thanks, Bert. And there was a question on water. I know that's possibly not your area of expertise, but
let's see.
All right, let's go for it. In the purity of water is very important. The more impure it is, you need to rectify out those impurities, minerals, magnesium, iron, etc.
Yes, and this is the water that you, I assume, well, when you make or buy GNS, there would be very little water in there, maximum 4%, probably a bit less. Now, of course, if you start redistilling your liquid, say to make gin, you're gonna dilute to, I don't know, say 50% ABV, then you're adding water. And it's true that the water that you add, it should be ideally demineralized water. Some people use reverse osmosis water. Of course, you have to make sure it doesn't go too far the other way. But you're right. But then at the same time, people, when diluting, sometimes they use particulate water. It's also part of their marketing. So they will use filtered water from, for example, Silent Pool. They use the water from the lake that they have behind them. Some people even import water, to add to the liquid. It can also give some more terroir experience or authenticity, or as a marketing or part of the story. If you have clean water at hand, especially the Scottish distillers will be proud to say they use Scottish water. But you're right, yeah, the purity of the water. I think it's a bit like the ethanol. It's a minimum. You need a minimum purity of the water, and then I think you're good to go after that. Yeah, in the end, you're adding water to ethanol, which is quite a strong cleaning agent. So you're probably going to be quite safe as long as you use water, not just from the tap. Yeah.
Thank you for answering that one. And then finally, maybe we make this one the last question, because actually this is something that we discussed before anyway, but was about the sweetness and what makes it sweet. It comes to mind that grape and sugarcane they might appear to be sweeter. Is that true? And what actually makes the sweet base?
Yeah, good question, and it's a fair question as well. So in terms of the sweeter profiles, we are looking at grape, sugarcane, but also sugar beet. And these, after distillation, there won't be any sugar. There won't be any sugar left. So it's not the same as refined sugar. It's just to be clear, there's absolutely no sugar in the ethanol. What you do detect is the aroma, and as I mentioned before, if you have a sweeter smell, a sweeter perception, that is going to reflect in the taste. Even though there's no sugar present, you will still experience a sweeter product, and that's mostly driven by the aroma, especially for grape. I invite you to try a grape ethanol or grape vodka or grape gin. You will find that the sweetness is quite pleasant, and that would be more driven by the aroma rather than the sugar content, because there isn't any. Yeah.
Fantastic. Well, I think that's well done, everyone. Thank you for all your questions. It's really great, and Bert, you fought those off with triumph. I think. Well done.
Yeah.
So thank you everyone for joining. We hope that you found that interesting and informative. Big thank you to Bert for all his input there. You can contact us at Ethimex at info@ethimex.com, and depending on if you want more information or the nature of your inquiry, we'll direct it either back to Bert or to the appropriate member in the team. But we're always here to answer your questions. And again, as a reminder, we will be putting the recording of this video on LinkedIn and our website, and we have a mailing list as well. So if you want to receive that directly into your inbox, then please head over to ethimex.com, and you can subscribe to our mailing list there on the Contact Us page, and we'll make sure we'll add you to that so it goes straight out to you. And if you're not already following us on LinkedIn, please do, so you will be kept informed of future events. And we do have another event in July with another colleague of ours, Richard Bales, specializing in Oloroso barrels and aging spirits in casks. So we hope you'll be able to join us for that, for volume 2. But in the meantime, we thank you again for joining. And but we did have a question from Stuart on whether we do send small volumes of grape-based spirits in the UK, which yeah, I think we can certainly help out with that. So any further questions, please do
yeah,
send us.
if you share the email, then that's probably the easiest way to deal with these requests.
Yeah. Thanks again. Have a brilliant afternoon, everyone, wherever you are, and enjoy the rest of the week. And thanks for joining. Bye.
Okay. Thank you.